Alright, today a live review of the Teeling single grain Irish whiskey. And this is from an unknown source distillery. This is a sourced whiskey. But this brand is owned by Bacardi. So we don't actually know if we're 100% sure where the whiskey came from. But whoever sourced it has to produce grain whiskey. So I mean, it might come from Jameson. I don't know. But at the end of the day, this is a sourced product. It could also come from Cooley, I suppose. This isn't triple distilled, is it? No, it's not triple distilled. So there's a good chance this came from Cooley because Cooley only double distills. I think they do grain whiskey at Cooley. Either way, it's a sourced product at the end of the day. 46% alcohol, 92 proof, non-chill filtered. Natural color, we're not sure. It doesn't say natural color on it. It has the ever so suspicious natural character on here. Some people say it's natural color, although I seem to think I've seen bottles with different colors, so that would suggest it's probably natural color, but we don't know for sure, and when we don't know for sure, we tend to say it's probably color added, so probably. And this is aged 5 to 6 years in Cabernet Sauvignon from California. And this is a mash bill of 95% corn and 5% barley. Here's that bottle there. And again, I've seen bottles of this exact product where the color is much lighter than this. So it makes me feel like these are maybe natural batches if the colors of the bottles are a little different. But I don't know. When AFK and you beat the game, tune in next week for the grand finale, Crassus. So of course we're going to rate this out of 100. 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal experience. And a sad pop. And going. So again, yeah, this is a little bit different of an offering. Again, it's a 100% grain whiskey from the same distillery, 95% corn, 5% malted barley. So it is mostly a corn whiskey. But of course, the entire maturation of this product is in Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's not like ex-bourbon matured and then finished. It's an entire red wine maturation. So like that, absent perhaps some typical like vanilla or sweetnesses that you would expect from things at least somewhat matured in ex-bourbon. Now, when we tried this before, the red wine cask was not maybe nearly as loud as one would kind of hope, assuming or understanding that it is an entirely matured in red wine. But it is definitely present. The character is definitely present there. I suppose perhaps the red wine barrels only have so much to give regardless of how many years you spent maturing in them. But at the end of the day, this is only 5-6 years old, I suppose, so it's not the oldest, and again, the longer it's in the barrel, the more barrel impact it will actually get to absorb. And of course, in Ireland, it's a kind of climate that, you know, probably longer barrel ages are probably helpful. But yeah, we'll assess this for what it is, which, if I seem to remember, there is some red wine characteristics, but it's also quite grainy. A lot of that, like, kind of corn, creamy corn whiskey kind of flavor, not dissimilar from Canadian whiskeys. You don't have to rage too much anyway, Crassus. Apparently I'm playing Sea of Stars during the week, so... or even tomorrow. So, you know, we got you covered a little bit. At least for now. Technically, Expedition 33 before FF7 is possible. Yeah, I mean, in theory, if I want to play JRPGs, I could play them at a different time. But it just has to grab my attention enough that I really want to put them ahead. I think in normal circumstances, I probably would have played Sea of Stars after. But it just so happens that we landed in it. Man, it's really hard to get that kind of like red berry note out of this. Again, it feels very dry and bitter. Like if there is a berry note, it's kind of like a bitter red berry. But mostly like some of that kind of like corn sweetness, corn grain kind of notes on the nose. Maybe a little bit of that like buttery character, a little bit of that like sweetness. But this is all like from the grains. It's not from the barrel. Yeah, like it's almost like a sweet cornbread with like a bitter red berry note. Not a whole lot more to this. At least not initially. It is like really strong on the corn notes today. Yeah, Teeling single grain Irish whiskey on the palate. Slunch it. So yeah, very similar on the palate. Kind of that sweet, grainy corn whiskey kind of notes. Kind of like creamy caramel corn sweetness. With just maybe like a touch of tannins. Really super reminds me of Canadian whiskey. A little bit of spiciness peaks on the early finish. But again, some more of those sweet kind of grain notes. Little bit of tannins, little bit of like barrel oakiness on the finish. Finish is like slightly too short, maybe like medium minus. Overall, it's like not bad, but it kind of like feels the same way that I feel like I felt about it the past times we've had this bottle, which is like it's a little too grain forward, and the like wine barrel feels like it just didn't have as much impact as we would like, and maybe it's related to the age of the product, or just simply that the grain whiskey didn't take the red wine barrel too well, or there wasn't that much to get out of it. I'm not sure, but it's kind of like all in the sweet and grain notes, which is not necessarily unpleasant. But it's a kind of whiskey that it's like, well, man, I feel like I could find a Canadian grain whiskey that was half the price of this and get a very similar kind of experience. Again, very sweet, but still very like bready and not malty, but like grainy. Like on the like grains of the distillate, I guess, was I tend to default to malt, say malt, but that's not what it is here. That kind of bready, kind of grainy kind of note. And it's not like unpleasant, like it's pretty nice, like kind of sweet, cornbread, sweet corn, sweet grain kind of aroma. With, again, just maybe like a touch of like bitter red berry. You almost might go as to say it's like kind of close to like a lemon cornbread too. There's maybe just something hinting at a citrus. But that's as much of a projection as I can make. It's a bit of a stretch. Not terribly like spicy at all. You don't really get those deeper sweetnesses. There's not much of a like overt fruity note either. Like even for a young whiskey, it's not terribly fruity. Just that like maybe subtle bitter red berry component. Yep, sweet and grainy palate with just like a touch of like a tannic character. Spike some spice on the finish. Sweet grains, slight tannins, some oak. It feels like, even from the first sip, it feels solved. Like I'm waiting for it to try to present me with something, but it feels very solved. Like I don't have much to learn from it, even trying to give it as much time as I can, but I feel like there's just really not that much to it. And again, not unpleasant. Like it's actually like, again, pretty drinkable. Some nice, pleasant, sweet characters. But maybe like slightly elementary for my preference. And again, I feel like it's like one of those things where it's so similar to like that corn whiskey kind of flavor profile that I feel like probably, again, you could get a predominantly corn-based Canadian whiskey and have it taste very similar. It's very similar to that. I'm actually kind of curious if the I guess the one thing that's different between this and like the Canadian whiskeys that I've had that are similar kind of mash is while this one is grainy on the palate and it's got a little bit of that like cream caramel thing, it's not nearly as creamy as like the Canadian whiskeys tend to get. And I don't know if that's down to like the climate in Ireland versus the climate in Canada, but I find the Canadian whiskeys of high corn mash bill are like way creamier than this. Not enough barrel impact on this one. Yeah, I would agree. The barrel's too subtle, either because the barrel was not that good of a barrel to begin with. It doesn't necessarily say it's not a first fill Cabernet Sauvignon, I suppose. But I can't imagine Cabernet Sauvignon wine casks are frequently reused, I would think. And it may be just down to, again, the grain whiskey didn't take to the wine cask that well, or maybe it needed more years. Again, 5 to 6 years is not the longest, especially for Irish climate, I suppose. Or it could be that the barrel didn't have much to give. Whatever it is, it feels like the barrel impact is way too low on this one. And it's come across way too grainy. And it could be something like, hey, the grain whiskey was just overpowering what that barrel had to give. I don't know, but definitely a like distillate driven whiskey. And again, not super unpleasant, but it's almost like it feels like a single grain whiskey that was matured not that long, almost in like a neutral cask, like a refill ex bourbon or something like that. It doesn't have the same level of maybe vanilla character you might expect out of an ex bourbon barrel, but like a really tired neutral ex bourbon barrel. Like it kind of feels almost like that. There's just some whispers of the red wine thing. It's like, oh, I went looking for red wine because it said Cabernet Sauvignon on the front. And I found it in like the dregs, like in the like echoes, not really up front. It almost feels like, I think one of the things that they wrote on the website about this is there's like red berries on the nose, and man, is that a stretch for me, especially right now. I don't want to call it a disingenuous note because everything's subjective, and I know companies tend to embellish their notes when they write them, but it's a stretch for me. Yeah, it's just all sweet caramel, cornbread, sweet corn, sweet grains, sweet lemon bread kind of nose and palate. But I probably, like I would say again, if I blinded this whiskey, I think I would assume it's a Canadian whiskey. I really would. It's very similar. All right, so let's score the aroma at a 25. Which again, it's kind of just a whole bunch of sweet notes, maybe slight bitter red berry in the echoes, maybe slight lemon citrus in the echoes. The intensity is not bad enough to give it a terrible ass score, but it's probably like 14. There's just not a lot going on here. All right, so let's focus on the palate. Which again, I'll try to see if I can get something that's not sweet cream caramel corn distillate corn grain kind of note. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. Something that's not that. I can't even feel like I get a spice until the finish. Like, Yeah. Texture is like not nothing to write home about either. Um, I'm having a hard time. Like, here's where I'm struggling. I'm trying to decide if what I'm experiencing is really consistent with multiple notes. I feel like it's one note. I feel like I can say multiple things about it or describe it in multiple ways, but feels pretty one note on the palate. It's just got a little whisper of a tannic thing, like barely. Palate's like 13. Finish might be a little better. There's a little bit of a transition there, even though it's not really like as long as I would like. Starts with some spice. Get some of that sweet grain caramel note. Get some of that tannic note. Get some of that barrel. Fades slightly too fast. $15. All right, so texture. I guess we'll get rid of this for the texture, but I think the texture is not particularly good. I have to decide whether it's like low smooth or high thin. Again, it is 46% alcohol, but you know, it doesn't seem like super watery necessarily, but that's hard. I'll give it a 4. I don't want to like super debate one point. It's like a 3 or a 4. We'll call it a 4. We'll give it its point. So out of 15, my personal experience with this whiskey. Hello user. Unfortunately, we are not going to talk about political things in our broadcast, so I'll see you tomorrow. No politics, please. Thank you. We're talking about whiskey, not politics. Need to stand united for whiskey. Yeah. So at the end of the day, this particular whiskey, why would I pick up this whiskey versus another similar whiskey? So the appeal here, when you look at the label, is, oh, this is not a malt whiskey. This is a corn whiskey. This is a grain whiskey from Ireland. That's a little bit different. Oh, it's got a red wine barrel. That entirely matured, in fact. That's a little bit different. So you're going in here, as I did, I suppose, looking at the label and being like, oh, this is a grain whiskey in a red wine barrel from Ireland. What a funky adventure we might have. And you get here and you're like, well, it surely is a fucking corn whiskey. But the barrel didn't really slap. And It kind of just tastes roughly like a Canadian grain whiskey otherwise. So it's hard. It's hard to recommend this. If anything, the most notable thing about this particular bottle is the fact that it let down so much that it, you know, oh, right, it's that whiskey that was like, felt like it should have been interesting, but it wasn't interesting at all. That's kind of like the way I feel about it. I was really hoping for something interesting and found it kind of just tasted like a reasonable run-of-the-mill Canadian whiskey, and even though it comes from Ireland and it's in a red wine barrel. So that doesn't feel very good. And in some ways, that is like infamy rather than fame. So the truth of the matter is, I would have been good if I didn't buy this, I think. I don't think I missed anything. I would have missed anything. I didn't know, but, you know, we try to find new and interesting bottles, new and interesting barrels, and new and interesting mash bills, and I kind of thought this was it, and it was not it. Unfortunately. So in that way, it's a little bit forgettable. And I probably would not necessarily recommend this one. If someone asked, hey, what do you think about that Irish single grain that came in a wine barrel? And I'd be like, bought this in Craigellachie on the same day. You win some, you lose some. Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, man, I just expected more. I think that's what it is. I expected more from this, and I didn't get it. That being said, it's not unpleasant. Like, it's very drinkable. Like, if you're going to sit down and watch a movie and you want a smooth, sweet grain whiskey, you know, you're on a smoky day and you want something that's sweet and easy to drink and you don't want to think about, it's not bad. It's just that you could have also bought, like, Crown Royal and got a similar experience, I think. Which feels bad to say. It's not unpleasant. It's just not good. So for me, we're going to give this a solid 2 out of 15. And I feel like that's maybe generous. I kind of want to give it 1. But, you know, it tried to do something. And there's a little bit of something. So we'll give it 2. 2, if anything, just for the experience that it reminded us that because something seems interesting doesn't necessarily mean it worked. Because this didn't work. Whatever they were doing here, it didn't fucking work. Alright. So, into the calculator. 14 and 13 and 15. 4 and 2 is 48. 48 out of 100. Which means this is okay. It's okay. You know, it was 1 point short of being good. You know, I gave it a couple extra points that I maybe shouldn't have given it. So I can't even say, hey, I robbed it of being good. I think I gave it some extra points. And it ended up on okay. This is okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's okay.